So I've really only wasted money on two things in my life. Number one, buying at auction this vintage first edition Hall & Oates sheet music anthology. And two, unnecessarily spending lots of money on different aspects of recording equipment. So I'm just going to start breaking down kind of like the very basics of home recording, because there's definitely a lot of BS out there that I wish I would have known when I started out. By no means am I an audio engineering expert, but I've been doing it a long time, and I can 100% say that if you gave an inexperienced version of me 10 years ago a chance to record on like an SSL all by myself, I would absolutely not have made as good a recording as I could today with like a $150 Focusrite Scarlett preamp interface. So basically what you need to get started in home recording is going to be as followed. And definitely if you have any questions, hit me up and I'll try to like make more videos to answer them. But the first thing you have to consider is buying an interface, and buying the right interface too. There's a lot of different ways you can do this, going from as simple as buying like a USB microphone to buying something like a little more complex, like a rack-mounted type deal with like a ton of inputs and outputs, and all the terminology and everything can be kind of confusing at first. So hopefully this will shed some light on some questions you have. Now you can also buy a standalone digital recorder that you don't need a computer on, but most of this is going to be focused on using an interface with a computer. Another thing that you can do is maybe just use some software, but another component that we're going to be talking about is actually using, like saying that you have the ambition to actually record some kind of analog sound, whether it be an acoustic guitar, a vocal, a piano, something like that. So it's not all in the box, as they say, which just means you're using only software to kind of manipulate sounds, which is cool too, but this is going to be more focused on kind of like an analog approach to making music. So again, one of the most important things is analog versus digital. And basically all that means is that analog is like an actual physical sound wave that is made by like a real sound, and digital is something that is trying to kind of represent an actual sound wave that a computer can process. So what you need to do that is something to convert analog sounds to digital sounds, which is known as AD conversion, and that'll usually be listed on what an interface is. So an interface is just they come in all sorts of like shapes and sizes. They sit in between maybe like a guitar or a vocal microphone and a computer to kind of transmit that analog information into digital information. So the most important decision that you can make is what you want your interface to do for you. Now, you'll see something like how many channels it is. A channel is just how many things that you can record at one time. So my recommendation would be to get something that has at least 2 channels. The reason for that is because you never know when you might want to record 2 things simultaneously. Now, just because an interface has 2 channels doesn't mean that you can't eventually make like a huge production with like 100 channels of music. That's usually just what you can do at one time. Now, some interfaces have just 1 channel, which means you can record one thing at a time and then get like kind of multi-track that in a DAW, which we'll talk more about in a minute. But I think it's good to have 2 channels because you never know when you might want to record something in stereo, where you can have kind of like a left and right image to kind of have more of like a depth, which again, more stuff we'll talk about later. And you never know when you might want to record just 2 things happening simultaneously. You know, like if you're a singer-songwriter, you might want to have 1 microphone for your voice, 1 thing for your guitar. There's a lot of different reasons that you might want to have at least 2 channels. Now, if you have ambitions to record like a full band at the same time, or maybe like a drum kit, you might want something with more channels, or at least something with the capability of expanding into more channels. Some interfaces will have something called like a digital in, or like a ADAT in, something like that, and that's usually where you can take like another bank of preamps, a preamp generally just being something that is going to add more channels to your interface. So a lot of these interfaces have the ability to connect other preamps to them to kind of expand what they do. So you really have to kind of know how many channels your interface does and what kind of computer it works with, because not all interfaces will work universally with all computers. Some things are used just for Mac, some things are used just for Windows, a lot of them can do both. But again, like one isn't better than the other. Some people will say, oh, Mac is better, oh, Windows is better, whatever. Again, that's more BS. They can both do the same job. It really is just your preference and which DAW, digital audio workstation, you choose to use might be dependent on what kind of computer you're using to do the job. So a DAW, again, I like saying DAW because it sounds a little bit classier than DAW. I don't like the word DAW at all for whatever reason, but again, that's another kind of important decision. Now they all do pretty much the same thing. I'm talking about like Logic Pro X, which is what I use. That's Apple only. Pro Tools is a subscription service kind of model that they have now. You can use that on Windows or Mac. Reaper is another one that's popular. Record, there's like a ton of them out there. Again, it's not like one is better than the other. They just do different things a little bit differently, but it's all just a way to organize the audio that you're recording and then being able to kind of like manipulate that audio in the box once you have it recorded to turn it into a song and to kind of like cut it up, whatever you might want to do with it. Again, we're going to get more into DAWs later, but right now it's more about just kind of like finding the right interface for you. And to do that, you kind of have to understand the connections too. So whenever you're looking at like a spec sheet for like an interface that you might want to buy, it'll tell you what kind of connections there are. Now generally, the main two that are used are going to be XLR and 1/4 inch connections. XLR ones are mainly used for microphones, but other kind of gear uses it too. But really, it's more of like a microphone thing. And that's like another term that you might see is something called phantom power that is usually available with these interfaces. And all that does is it powers certain types of microphones, condenser microphones. Again, there's a lot of different types of mics. That's a whole different video. But basically, if you want to kind of power a microphone, a lot of times you'll need something called phantom power that connects via an XLR cable into the interface, which then gets transmitted into digital audio into your DAW that you can then manipulate, right? So some of them have these combo jacks that can be confusing for some people at first because an XLR connector is different than a 1/4 inch connector. Now you're probably very familiar with a 1/4 inch connector because like a guitar plug cable, that's a 1/4 inch jack, all right? So there are a couple different types, and like a guitar cable is what's called like a TS 1/4 inch connector. That means tip sleeve. A lot of times when you're working with audio interfaces, you're looking at a balanced TRS connector, which looks exactly like a guitar cable, but it's TRS, which means tip ring sleeve, so you can tell the difference between them. And that's a balanced signal, which is going to work better for your audio gear. Now again, some of these are combo jacks where they might look just like XLR jacks, but you can actually put a TRS cable into it right into the middle. I've had a lot of people confused, like, how do I hook this up? Well, actually, you can kind of just like stick this in right in the middle. Even though it looks like an XLR jack, it's a combo jack. It can use either or. The inputs for like that popular Focusrite Scarlett preamp is a good example of like a combo jack, but tons of different interfaces and stuff use them. So aside from deciding how many channels you need and what kind of computer your interface is compatible with, the next thing you have to make sure is that your interface is compatible with your computer's operating system. Now, some older interfaces won't be compatible with newer operating systems. Case in point, this Apogee Ensemble, the older generation ensembles are not compatible with some of the updates. So if you're looking at buying a used interface, which is really kind of a good way to save a lot of money, if you're first getting into like some of the higher end interfaces, you need to make sure that what you have is going to work with current operating systems, or that you have like an operating system that is compatible. So that can be kind of a confusing thing, but there's definitely like a lot of forums out there that will kind of help you with questions like that. But it's definitely one of the most important things because there's nothing worse than like shelling out for an interface and then finding out that like it's not even compatible with your computer or the software that you're running. So once you've chosen an interface and you're getting it to work with your computer, which congratulations if you've done that, because some people have a lot of problems with that, you're gonna need a way to listen to what you've recorded, and that's gonna be the opposite of AD, analog to digital conversion, is going to be digital to analog conversion. So that's going to be how your interface is taking the digital information that you've kind of manipulated in your DAW workstation, and then it's getting it back out of the box so you can listen to it, so you can monitor it. Now, the two main ways to do that are through a pair of headphones. Most of these interfaces will have like a 1/4-inch headphone output, usually on the front of them. And on the back, usually, they have line level outputs. Sometimes these are 1/4-inch, sometimes these are combo jacks, and sometimes these are XLRs, right? But what those are meant for are to go to studio monitors. And again, studio monitors could be like a whole other video in and of itself, but there's a big question on, should I be mixing on headphones or should I be mixing on monitors? You can absolutely mix on headphones, and I would say if you wanted to like if you have like a pretty finite budget, I would say go for a better interface first before you get the monitors, because I think that money will be better spent upgrading later and just mixing on headphones at first, because it can be kind of expensive to buy like decent studio monitors at first, and you can get by mixing on headphones. Again, it's not the ideal situation. You're going to want a pair of monitors so you can get a better just a better idea of what like the stereo image is going to be, and headphones for the most part can kind of lie to you as far as a mix goes, because it's such an enclosed listening environment. Some headphones are better than others, etc., etc. You can go on forever, but you can absolutely mix on headphones. Again, for like the best, results, you're eventually going to want studio monitors, but those can always be upgraded later. And the pricing on monitors too is usually for one, and you need two because you need a left and a right channel. Now, another thing that is interesting with recording when it comes into home recording, kind of like we talked about at the top of this video, like the BS component of it is, you might think you can just throw money at something and it instantly gets better. Like I said before, that's not really the case, but there are some exceptions where you can throw money at something and the quality of your recordings actually gets better. The one thing that I can personally vouch for, the biggest improvement that my recordings actually made was when I replaced one of the stock preamps in my interface. A preamp is just something that goes in between a microphone or an instrument into your interface. And again, the best improvement I ever made was buying this Universal Audio 6176 preamp to replace a stock pre. A stock preamp is just the one that comes with your interface, and some of those are of varying quality depending on the interface that you choose. But I definitely remember a drastic improvement in my recording qualities by me not actually learning anything, but just inserting this into my signal chain. A signal chain just being kind of like all the stuff that your signal runs through before it actually gets converted into digital information. The second biggest improvement in quality that I got just from kind of changing something, buying something, was getting a set of NS10 monitor speakers and starting to mix through those as compared to what I was mixing on, just because I could hear more accurate representation of what my mixes were. Because you might find that when you first start recording stuff and mixing it, and maybe if you're mixing on headphones, it'll sound awesome in your headphones, and then you play it like on a speaker system or in your car or something, and it sounds totally different. So different monitoring setups, listening situations are going to give you kind of different results, and it's good to be able to cross-reference a lot of these things. So that's just kind of like a basic introduction to maybe home recording and getting the right interface for you. And we can go really deep into this, and I'm going to make a lot more videos on this, so please, any questions that you have, hit me up, because there's still like so many things to talk about, like bit rate depth and sample rate and stuff like that. But again, this is really just kind of like bare bones, kind of talking about the absolute minimum requirements of setting things up. And the number one takeaway that I can give you is to not be discouraged by all the stuff out there. Like a lot of videos you'll see is like, okay, you need to like stereo mic these with these microphones, using these cables into these preamps. But again, that's the stuff that you can that will incrementally make your sound better over time. I really think it's just kind of getting into just the act of recording and hearing yourself back is something that's going to make you a much better musician. Just being able to like listen to playback of yourself playing. It's really cool to kind of have. I'm definitely glad that I have recordings of myself like 8 years ago, just as kind of like like time markers and how my own playing and how my own sound has improved over time, which is kind of like an inspiring, sometimes embarrassing thing, but it's something that I really think anybody should get into because, you know, if you're a musician, you have aspirations of whatever, whether it's trying to do it as a profession or if it's just for fun or if it's just to kind of, you know, make joke birthday songs for people or to kind of bust your friends' balls. It's a really kind of fun thing that you can get into and an endless money pit, which is something that we're all looking for. So definitely if you have any questions or things you want to see more on, I'm going to start kind of getting into these videos every now and then when I can do it. But I would love to kind of follow your feedback as I kind of work through this series. And again, if you have questions, hit me in the comments, Instagram, Twitter, or the website, and I will talk to you all soon. Thanks a lot.